Hey guys, this video in some respects is a follow-up to two of my previous videos, those being my review of Tales of Arise and my video on how badly Tales games need ports. While you don't need to watch them, I figured I should mention them here as they both play into the topic of today's video, which is why I'm not optimistic about the future of the Tales franchise. Now, if it isn't obvious from my video content, I'm a huge fan of Bandai Namco's Tales series. I've even gone as far as to play the Japanese exclusive entries with no fan translations, showing just how much I love the series. However, as I play these historic titles, I'm quickly noticing something about them that is quite worrying, and that is the fact that they only exist in the past. Despite existing over 4 decades, the vast majority of Tales titles were all released between the years of 2002 and 2010. Since Tales of Xillia came out in 2011, there's been a noticeable drop-off in the output of Tales games. From being yearly releases to bi-yearly to today, where games like Tales of Arise take over 5 years to come out. While I personally think the annual releases of the 2000s was probably a bit of overkill, the 5-year wait seems like a ridiculous time between entries. Are we seriously not going to be able to play the next mainline Tales game until 2026 or possibly even later? What makes the wait even more concerning is the revelation that Tales of Arise wasn't even meant to be a Tales game. This meant that the team at Namco, whose job it is to make new Tales games, hasn't developed a new Tales game in over 7 years. What are they even doing there? This is supposed to be Bandai Namco's flagship JRPG series, and the only game we've had in the last 7 years is a random JRPG repackaged to look like a Tales game. Now, I know what some of you are going to say. Modern games take a long time to develop. Look at the Xenoblade Chronicles games. It takes the team 5 years to make games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I don't hear you complaining about those. And you're somewhat right. But at the same time, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was developed from the ground up as the next Xenoblade game, and not some repackaged JRPG. It's a much larger and content-rich game as well, which justifies the lengthier development time. And you want to know the biggest irony of it all? It was made in less time than Tales of Arise, coming out a few months before its predecessor's 5-year anniversary, as opposed to a few months after it. Another reason why I don't complain at the length of release windows for Xenoblade games is the fact that when they come out, they're good. Even at its worst, games like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 show that Monolith took their time to craft a masterpiece of a JRPG, meanwhile Tales of Arise is a whole second half of a game which is extremely rushed. Why does a Tales game that took twice as long as previous entries feel rushed? It's no secret that I did not like Tales of Arise, however it's not the only recent entry in the series that I've had major issues with. Looking at previous entries, we have games like Tales of Xillia 2, which was in some respects a lazy asset swap, Zestiria, which has a whole host of issues, and Berseria, whose combat was kind of brain dead. How is it even possible that the games spat out yearly had a better level of quality control than the games that took multiple years to make? To be honest, I think the answer is pretty obvious when you realise that the drop-off in Tales releases coincides perfectly with Bandai Namco dissolving the Namco Tales studio. While the studio was hemorrhaging a lot of money at the end of its life, it still had a laser focus on making great Tales content both in games and other media. Its loss has been a great blow to the Tales franchise as it no longer has a dedicated team behind it, and just as we have seen with other franchises who have lost their creative leads, Command & Conquer and Metal Gear come to mind, things tend to spiral downhill in terms of a solid output of quality games. The loss of the Namco Tales studio hasn't just affected new games, it's also affected ports. Going back to the topic of recent releases, in 2019 we did get the pretty awesome Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition. However, that was the only release we got in the 5 years between Berseria and Arise. For a series with a ton of titles to its name, Bandai Namco has done a pretty pathetic job in keeping its titles available on modern systems. To once again return to the golden days, in the late 2000s, alongside the yearly releases, it was not uncommon to also receive a port of a past title. While like any new mainline games, the PSP was bombarded with ports from the series' classic 2D entries. Meanwhile, the PS3 got ports from Vesperia, Graces, and both Symphonia games. However, since then, there have been next to no new ports, and this has resulted in the ridiculous fact that 14 out of the current 19 mainline games are not available on a modern system. Let's compare the Tales series to other popular JRPG series. Xenoblade, every single number entry is available on Switch. Persona, 3 out of 5 mainline entries are now available on modern platforms and PC. Kingdom Hearts, pretty much every single major game is on modern systems. Final Fantasy, again, pretty much every mainline game is available on a modern system. The only popular series off the top of my head with less games available on modern systems is Fire Emblem, which, as a Nintendo exclusive series, adds a whole other can of worms. Now, for the most part, I have focused on the mainline games, but much like other big name series, Tales has a large number of spin-off titles. Again, back in the late 2000s, alongside new mainline titles and ports, we'd also usually get a yearly release of a Tales of the World game, or something similar. However, since the Tales of the World series came to an end in the early 2010s, we've had no new spin-off games, and I mean absolutely nothing. Rather than spin-off games, we've instead got a whole bunch of mobile games, which have pretty much all become defunct as Bandai Namco seems incapable of running a solid mobile game. Now with Tales of Symphonia Remaster coming out, I hear a lot of people talking about the possibility of more ports on the way. However, we've been here before. After Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition sold really well, I remember everyone talking about what was coming out next, with rumours being circulated about a Xillia duology. However, we got none of that. Instead, we got one mediocre mainline Tales game, along with the already available PC port of Symphonia being moved to consoles. With this as a baseline, I currently expect the next 3 years to be completely dead of new Tales games, with maybe a port of Graces or Abyss to modern systems if we're lucky, and then a new mainline game in 2026 or 27. Perhaps I'm wrong. Hell, I want to be wrong. Perhaps over the next 3 years, Bandai Namco will open the floodgates of ports and make all 14 currently unavailable titles playable on consoles and PC. Perhaps we might see the return of regular releases, and even some spin-off games that aren't doomed to fail mobile games. All I want to say is, don't get your hopes up, as we've been here before and we've seen how little Bandai Namco currently cares about the Tales series. Sorry guys for being such a downer today, but I really wanted to get this topic off my chest, as I don't feel like anyone else is bringing this up. If you find my takes interesting, please consider following me on my brand new Twitter account that I have just launched. Videos like this and my Tales retrospective take a while to make, so if you want to hear more from me in the meantime, use the link down in the description below. Meanwhile, I'm back to finishing off my Tales of Xillia retrospective, which I hope to have out soon.